The scent of damp earth and pine needles, a smell I've known my entire life, suddenly felt alien, a mocking reminder of the place I called home and where I faced something that I still can't understand. I'm a park ranger, and I've dedicated my life to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I know every trail, every stream, every hidden corner of this place. But in Cataloochee Valley, I found something that shouldn't exist, something that challenged everything I believed, something that has made me question the very fabric of reality. My name is Daniel Hayes, and the Great Smoky Mountains National Park isn't just my workplace. It's been my life. For 15 years, I've walked its trails, charted its rivers, and breathed its air. As a park ranger, I thought I knew every inch of this place, every hidden grove and forgotten path. But the reports that had been coming from visitors about strange lights in the Cataloochee Valley were something I couldn't ignore. They were not like the usual sightings. They were different, more consistent, more unnerving. And as a park ranger, I felt it was my duty to investigate. Cataloochee Valley is a beautiful, secluded part of the park, known for its historic buildings and its abundant wildlife. But it also has a reputation for being a place where strange things happen, where the veil between realities seems to be thinner. It's a place where old myths and legends still linger, a place where people claim to have seen things that defy explanation. I, a man of science and reason, had always dismissed those claims, but I was not able to dismiss these latest reports. And I had to go and check myself, even if it meant stepping into the realm of the unknown. I decided to investigate the area alone. I packed my gear, made sure my radio was working, and set off early one morning, walking on the familiar trails. The sounds of the forest surrounding me. The air was crisp and cool, the sun was rising above the peaks, and the forest seemed to be alive with the sounds of birds and insects. But as I walked deeper into the valley, the sounds began to fade, replaced by an unnerving silence that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. The world seemed to change, to grow less welcoming, less familiar. I followed the reports, venturing into the areas that were less explored, away from the trails, guided only by the directions that the hikers had provided. The forest grew denser, the shadows darker, and the silence became more oppressive with each step that I took. I started to feel a sense of unease, a feeling that I was being watched, that I was not alone in the forest. But I tried to ignore it, focusing on my task, focusing on the facts, trying to convince myself that all of this was nothing more than a coincidence. After several hours of walking, I reached a clearing, and in the middle of it, I saw a cabin. It was old, abandoned, and dilapidated, its wooden walls rotting, its roof caved in. But what made it strange was the fact that it was not marked in any map of the park. I had never seen it before, and I had explored every inch of the valley. It was a clear anomaly, and I felt compelled to investigate. It was like a sign, a promise, a message that was waiting for me. As I approached the cabin, I noticed that its door was slightly ajar, as if it was inviting me in. The air grew cold, a sudden drop in temperature that made me shiver, and the scent of damp wood and decay became stronger, almost suffocating. My mind raced, my heart pounded in my chest as I reached out my hand and pushed the door open. It was a move that I would later regret. I stepped into the dark interior of the cabin, my flashlight cutting through the gloom. And that was when I saw it, on the far wall of the cabin. Amidst the cobwebs and the decay, I saw photographs, old black and white photographs of the park, pictures that seemed to be from a different era. I went closer, trying to decipher the images, and that's when I saw it. In one of the photographs, dated from 1922, I was standing, in my current uniform, next to a group of rangers from that time period. My badge and expression were exactly the same as they are today. My face, the face of the man of science, was in a picture from a time when I wasn't even born. My breath hitched in my throat, and my blood ran cold. I was seeing something that shouldn't be possible, something that defied all logic and reason. I was a park ranger, a man of facts, a man of science. But what I was facing now was something beyond my comprehension, something that was shaking the very foundations of my reality. I knew that I had found more than just a mysterious cabin. I had stumbled into the depths of the unknown, and I was not ready for what I would face in that place. The dim light of my flashlight danced across the photographs, each image a disturbing glimpse into a past that should not have included me. I ran my fingers over the aged paper, the faded ink, the ghostly faces of the Rangers from 1922, and I felt a sense of disorientation, a feeling that time itself was becoming malleable, that the boundaries between past, present, and future were blurring together. The cabin, which I had thought was just a place of mystery, now felt like a portal, a gateway to a dimension where the laws of physics did not apply. It was an overwhelming experience, and I felt lost in the corridors of time, trapped in the confines of a strange and impossible reality. I was a park ranger, a man who knew all the answers, but now I was just a human being facing the unknown, and the experience was both terrifying and exciting. I knew that I was about to face something that would change me forever. It felt as if the cabin was testing me, that its secrets were waiting to be uncovered. I noticed that the cabin itself was not just old, it was ancient, built with methods that I could not recognize, using materials that seemed to be pulled from another era. The wood was dark and weathered, the walls were strangely smooth, and the windows, though broken, seemed to be made of a type of glass that was almost iridescent. And I realized that this cabin was not just a random structure. It was also a key, a link to a past that was also my future. It was as if the past was speaking to me, trying to warn me, trying to guide me, trying to save me, but I didn't know how or from what. The sense of unease that I had felt before grew stronger, a constant reminder that I was not welcome in this place. It was as if the forest itself was trying to push me away, to warn me against the secrets that the cabin held. As I continued to explore, I noticed that the cabin was also filled with other objects, old journals, maps, and strange artifacts that seemed to be from a different civilization. The journals were filled with illegible handwriting. The maps depicted areas of the park that I had never seen before, and the artifacts were made of unknown materials, their purpose unclear, their design utterly baffling. It was as if the cabin was a repository of lost knowledge, a place where time had lost its meaning, where the past and the present were intertwined. And it was then that I noticed that I was no longer just a park ranger. I was now also an explorer, a discoverer of ancient mysteries, and my duty was not to protect the park. It was to understand it. I tried to focus on the details, to find a logical explanation for everything that I was seeing, but my mind refused to accept anything that made sense. I was facing the impossible, and I had to embrace the irrational if I wanted to survive. I started to feel a strange connection with the cabin, as if it was a living being, with its own thoughts, its own secrets, its own desires. And as I explored its depths, I knew that it was no longer just a place. It was also a character, an active participant in this strange adventure. I had entered the cabin as a park ranger, but I was now something different, something I could not even name. The cabin had changed me, it had tested me, and it had also welcomed me into its domain. And I was ready to face whatever it had to show me. I knew that I was about to face something that would change me forever. And as I walked through the cabin, I felt that I was also walking through my own past, present, and future. I was trying to make sense of all of that when I noticed something else. A small notebook, tucked away in a dusty corner, an object that seemed out of place, but also strangely significant. I picked it up, and I opened it, and that's when I noticed the drawings. They were not just random lines. They were maps of the park, but different, older, from a different time. And in the center of the map, there was a symbol that I had seen before, in a dream, in a memory, in a place that I could not remember. It was then that I realized that I had made a mistake by venturing into that cabin. And whatever was going to happen next, it was probably going to be bad. The silence of the cabin was broken by a strange sound, a low hum that seemed to vibrate through the very walls, a sound that seemed to be coming from deep beneath the earth. The ground beneath my feet trembled, the air grew cold, and the cabin started to shake, as if it was about to collapse around me. I knew that I was not alone in this place anymore, and that whatever had been sleeping in the shadows was now awake, and ready to claim me as its own. The photographs on the wall seemed to shift and move, their eyes now focused on me, the images of the past now staring into my present, and I felt as if the cabin was not just a portal. It was also a trap, designed to lure me into its depths, to consume me and claim my soul. I could not rationalize the situation. I could not explain what was happening, and I realized that the only way to survive this was to embrace the impossibility of my situation. I had faced a mystery, and I had found an answer that I could never have expected. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, the shadows danced around me, and the cabin seemed to pulse with an unsettling energy. It was as if the very building was alive, a breathing, sentient entity that was watching me, judging me, waiting for me. And I was completely alone. It was then that the temperature dropped drastically, and that is when I realized the truth. The cabin was not the mystery. I was. The doppelganger in the picture was not just a coincidence. It was an omen, a warning of what was to come. And whatever was about to happen would be a consequence of the choices that I was about to make. I was not just a park ranger. I was now the key to something that was both ancient and terrible. And I was now trapped in a place that did not adhere to the laws of time. And now I was about to know why and how. I was about to face my destiny, and I knew, deep down, that I was not going to like it. But in the end, I was still a park ranger, and I still had a job to do. The cabin was no longer a place of mystery. It was now a battlefield, and I knew that I was about to face the consequences of my curiosity and the secrets of time that were hidden inside of it. And the fight would be something that I could never have expected. I was no longer Daniel. I was something else. And I was trapped in a place where time had lost its meaning. And I was now part of something bigger than myself. I tried to organize my thoughts, to focus on my next steps, but the cabin seemed to be warping around me, its walls shifting and moving, its shadows growing darker, its air colder. I realized that this was no longer just about finding the source of the strange lights. It was now about my survival, about saving my soul from whatever had been awakened in the depths of the forest. And I knew that my journey was far from over, that I was only at the beginning of my greatest adventure, or at the beginning of the end. The floorboards of the cabin groaned, as if it was an old beast stretching its limbs, and a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the beam of my flashlight, plunging me into darkness. But the darkness was not complete. The photographs on the wall were now glowing with a faint, ethereal light, the faces in the images now staring directly at me, their eyes piercing through the shadows, and in the middle of them was me. I could see a version of myself staring right back at me from a different era, from a different timeline. And I knew that the time for answers had come. It was time for me to face the true nature of the mystery that I had just uncovered, and the truth about myself that had been hidden for so long. The walls of the cabin seemed to melt away. The ceiling dissolved into stardust, and the floor was now a vortex of swirling light, pulling me down into the depths of the unknown. The old journals, the maps, the strange artifacts were all swirling around me as the voice started to whisper. A familiar voice with an echo that was both ancient and terrible. It was my voice, but it was also the voice of the cabin, the voice of the forest, the voice of time. It was a voice that seemed to be speaking from the very fabric of reality, revealing its secrets, its mysteries, its intentions. I was no longer just a park ranger. I was now a part of the mystery, a key to unlocking the doors that I had always sought. But I also knew, with a cold certainty, that the answers that I was about to find would be more terrible than I could ever have imagined. I was falling into the rabbit hole, and I was about to face my destiny. The photographs on the wall seemed to pulse with a faint, ethereal light, the faces in the images now staring directly at me, as if they were trying to communicate some unspoken truth, a warning from beyond the veil of time. My own face, in that old picture, looked back at me with an eerie familiarity, a chilling reminder that my present was somehow connected to a past that I did not understand. The cabin, which had once seemed like a place of mystery, now felt like a living entity, a breathing being with its own secrets, its own purpose, and its own set of rules. It was an ancient observer, and I was now its subject. I ran my fingers over the aged paper of the photograph, tracing the outlines of my face, the lines of my uniform, the details of the old-fashioned park ranger badges. It was my face, and yet it was also the face of a stranger, a ghost from a past that was both real and unreal. I'd always considered myself a man of the present, a pragmatist who relied on facts and evidence, but I was now facing a reality that defied all logic, and my rational mind was struggling to make sense of. The impossible. It felt as if my world was crumbling. The foundations of my beliefs were shaking, and the rules that had always governed my life were no longer applicable. I was not sure who I was anymore. I've always been a solitary man, content in my own company, finding solace in the silence of the forest. But now, that solitude felt different, more oppressive, more menacing. I felt as if I was being watched, observed by unseen eyes, judged by unknown entities, and I felt a need to know more, to uncover the secrets that the cabin held, to find an answer to the impossible riddle that I was now a part of. It was a need that was stronger than my fear, and it was guiding my every move. As I continued to explore the cabin, I discovered more photographs, each one more unnerving than the last. There were images of other park rangers, faces that were both familiar and alien, all from different eras, all connected by a strange, inexplicable thread, all with similar expressions, similar eyes, similar uniforms, all with the same strange, knowing look. I realized that I was not the first one to stumble upon this secret, that this had been happening for a long time, that the cabin had been pulling people into its web for decades, for centuries. And it was then that I also realized that the reports about the lights were not just random occurrences. They were signs, markers, signals of a gateway being opened, and I was now at the center of that gateway. About to step into the realm of the unknown, I also found old journals, their pages filled with the scribbled handwriting of previous visitors, accounts of strange encounters, of distorted realities, of time itself behaving in unpredictable ways. The stories were fragmented and chaotic, but they all pointed towards the same thing. The cabin was not just a place. It was a portal, a gateway to a different dimension, a reality where the laws of nature did not apply. And I was trapped in it. I had always prided myself on my knowledge of the park, on my understanding of its history and its secrets, but I realized now that I had only scratched the surface, that the park was far older, far more complex, far more mysterious than I had ever imagined. My connection with nature, a connection that I always saw as an anchor, a source of solace, was now a source of fear, of doubt, of uncertainty. The cabin was testing my beliefs, shattering my illusions, and revealing the hidden depths of the darkness that lurked within the heart of the wilderness. I've always thought of myself as a protector of the park, a guardian of its secrets, but now I felt like an intruder, a trespasser in a place that was beyond my understanding, beyond my control. My sense of duty was still there, a burning flame that refused to be extinguished, but it was now mixed with a sense of fear, with a feeling that I was facing an opponent that was far more powerful than me. The more I saw, the more I realized that this was not a battle that I was meant to fight, but I had no choice. My destiny was tied to this cabin. I was part of its story now, and it was then that I started to see the contradiction of it all. I was a man of routine, but now I was trapped in a place where time had lost its meaning. I was a man of facts, but now I was surrounded by the impossible. I was a protector, but now I was the one who needed protection. And this contradiction was what made me realize that the journey that was unfolding before me was going to be as terrifying as it was enlightening. My life as a park ranger was over. Now I was a seeker, a traveler of the unknown. And the cabin was not just a place of mystery. It was my own personal labyrinth. And I had to find my way out. I looked at my own reflection in the dusty window. Pain, and I could see that I was no longer just a man. I was now also a character in a story, a puppet in a game that was far beyond my comprehension. The cabin was not just a structure. It was also an antagonist, a force that was pulling me deeper into its web, testing my courage, challenging my beliefs, and pushing me to the very limits of my sanity. And as I stared at my own face, I realized that I was not just facing an enemy. I was also facing a part of myself, a dark reflection that was trying to claim me as its own. The air in the cabin grew colder, a chilling breeze that seemed to seep into my very bones, and the silence was broken by a low, guttural hum that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. The photographs on the wall were no longer just images. They were now windows into other times, other realities, their eyes following me, judging me, waiting for me to make a move. I felt the weight of their gaze, a constant reminder that I was no longer in control, that I was now a puppet in a game. That I did not understand. I knew that I had to act, that I could not just remain in the cabin, waiting for whatever fate had in store for me. My initial impulse was to flee, to escape from this place and return to the familiar safety of the forest, but the door, which had been slightly ajar when I had arrived, was now shut, sealed by an unseen force. I tried to open it, my hands shaking, my heart pounding in my chest, but it was no use. It was as if I was trapped in a cage, held captive by the very cabin that I had decided to explore. And I realized that my scientific approach was useless, as I was facing something that went beyond all the laws of the world. The journals, which I had previously seen as just old papers, now seemed like a source of information, a guide through this twisted reality. I picked one of them, its pages brittle, and I started to read, deciphering the faded handwriting, trying to understand the stories that were contained within. The accounts were fragmented, chaotic, filled with descriptions of strange occurrences, of distorted landscapes, of time itself behaving in unpredictable ways. And as I read, I realized that I was not the first one to be trapped in the cabin, that this had happened before, that this was a recurring cycle that was claiming the lives of unsuspecting victims. One of the journals described a ritual, a ceremony, that seemed to be designed to open a doorway to another dimension, a gateway that would allow the forces of that other reality to cross over into ours. The author described how they had been drawn to the cabin by the strange lights, how they had been trapped, and how they had become part of the ritual, their souls consumed by the darkness. And as I read, I realized that this was my fate as well, that I was being pulled into the same cycle, that I was about to become another forgotten soul trapped in the depths of the cabin, I also found maps, depictions of the park that were unlike anything that I had ever seen, routes that seemed to shift and change, areas that did not exist in the real world. And as I stared at them, I realized that the cabin was not just a portal to another dimension. It was also a portal to other times, a gateway to the past, the present, and the future. And I was trapped in its corridors, lost in its twisted pathways. The cabin was no longer just a place. It was also a labyrinth. As I was trying to understand the maps, I noticed something else, a detail that made my blood run cold. Some of the routes seemed to be leading me towards the same point, a place that was not on any of the maps of the park, a destination that seemed to be calling me, drawing me deeper into the heart of the mystery. I looked at that point, at that unknown location, and I knew that was where I had to go. That was where I had to face whatever was waiting for me, even if it meant facing my own destruction. It was like a test, a challenge that I had to face if I wanted to survive. I had a choice to make. I could either try to resist, try to escape, and end up like the other victims of the cabin, or I could embrace the unknown, follow the maps, and try to understand the secrets that were hidden in its depths. It was a moral dilemma, a conflict between my fear and my curiosity, between my desire to survive and my need to uncover the truth. And my instincts told me that the only way to survive this was to accept my destiny. And as I made my choice, the cabin seemed to respond. The walls started to shift, the floor started to tremble, and the photographs on the wall seemed to grow brighter, as if they were about to reveal something that had been hidden from me. And then I saw it. In one of the photographs, the one that had first caught my attention, the one with my doppelganger from 1922, I noticed a small detail that I had previously missed. The rangers in that image were not just staring into the camera. They were also looking at something behind me, something that I could not see, something that seemed to be hidden just beyond the edge of the frame. And I realized with a chilling certainty that they were not just looking at something, they were looking at me. In all the times, in all the places, they had been looking at my face, and they had seen something that I could not understand. It was a message from the past, and I knew that I had to understand its meaning. This was not just my story. It was also the story of the men that came before me. My duty was no longer just about protecting the park. It was about saving myself, about breaking the cycle of terror that had been unfolding in the cabin for generations, about uncovering the truth that was hidden behind the veil of time. And to do it, I would have to step into the unknown and face the forces that were trying to claim my soul. The cabin was testing me, and the test was becoming even harder as every part of my rational brain screamed for me to run away from this impossible situation. And it was then that I knew, deep down, that the only way to survive this was to embrace the darkness and to use it to my advantage. The photograph with my doppelganger from 1922 now seemed to pulse with a strange internal light, drawing my attention to the detail that I had previously missed. The rangers in the image were not just staring at something behind me. They were also reaching towards it, as if they were trying to grasp it, as if they were trying to warn me about some impending danger. And it was then that I remembered my grandfather, a park ranger like me, a man who had always been fascinated by the park's history and its mysteries. He had told me stories of strange occurrences, of unexplained phenomena, of places where time seemed to bend and break, and he had always warned me to never venture too far from the established trails, especially in Catalucci Valley. His words echoed in my mind now, a haunting reminder of the path that I had chosen, of the curiosity that had led me into the depths of the cabin. I had always dismissed his stories as nothing more than old wives' tales, but now I realized that there was a truth to them, that there was a darkness hidden beneath the surface of the park, a force that had been manipulating events for centuries. And the cabin, I now realized, was not just a portal. It was also a trap, a place designed to lure unsuspecting victims into its web, and I had been foolish enough to walk into it. As I continued to read the journals, I started to notice a pattern, a recurring theme that seemed to connect all the stories. The writers described how they had felt a sense of disorientation, of being watched, of being drawn into a different reality. They had spoken of encounters with their doppelgangers, of moments where time had seemed to collapse around them, of experiences that defied all logical explanation. And each story ended the same way, with the victim becoming part of the cabin, their souls consumed by the darkness, their names erased from the pages of history. It was a cycle of terror, a chain of events that had been repeating itself over and over again, and I was now part of it. I was trapped in that place. As all the others before me, I also found a map, hidden between the pages of one of the journals, a map that depicted a secret path, a route that seemed to lead to the heart of the cabin, to the source of its power. The path was not marked in any of the official maps of the park. It was hidden, concealed, a secret that was only revealed to those who had stumbled into the cabin, those that were meant to be part of the ritual, to be a sacrifice in the process. I felt that I had to follow that path, that I had to reach the center of the cabin, that I had to face whatever was waiting for me there. My fate was tied to that place. As I studied the map, I noticed that the secret path was not a straight line. It was a spiral, a circular route that seemed to lead deeper and deeper into the heart of the cabin, as if I was being pulled into the center of a vortex. And as I traced the path with my finger, I could feel the cabin responding to my actions. The walls shifting and moving, the shadows dancing in a chaotic pattern. It was as if the cabin was testing me, challenging my determination, pushing me to the very limits of my sanity. It wanted me to turn back. It wanted me to give up. But I couldn't. I had to move forward. I glanced at my watch. Time seemed to have lost its meaning in the cabin, but I knew that it was running out, that I had to act quickly if I wanted to survive. I grabbed my gear, my flashlight, my radio, trying to prepare for what was to come, but I knew that nothing could have truly prepared me for the reality of what I was about to face. It was a mix of fear and determination, of dread and excitement. I was facing the unknown, but I was also ready to claim my own destiny. I realized that the cabin was not just a place of mystery. It was also a place of power, a nexus point where different dimensions intersected, a place where the past, the present, and the future were intertwined. And I, Daniel Hayes, park ranger, was now trapped in its web, facing the consequences of my curiosity, the weight of my own history, and the secrets of the ages. It was a heavy burden to bear, yes, but I had no choice. My duty was to protect the park, yes, but now it was also to save myself from this nightmare. And I had to use every ounce of courage that I had to do so. I could feel the pull, the force. That was drawing me towards the center of the cabin, towards the spiral path that was marked in the map. And as I took my first step towards it, I knew that I was no longer just a park ranger. I was now a traveler of time, a seeker of the impossible, a warrior facing a battle that was beyond my comprehension. The cabin was now my battlefield, and the enemy that I was about to face was ancient, powerful, and ruthless. But my will was stronger, and I was ready to fight. The spiral path, as depicted in the map, was not a physical trail, but an illusion, a sequence of shifting shadows and distorted reflections that seemed to pull me deeper into the heart of the cabin. The walls seemed to twist and turn. The floorboards groaned beneath my feet, and the air grew heavy with a strange, oppressive energy. The photographs on the wall were no longer just images. They were now windows into different times, different realities, their eyes following me, watching me, judging my every move. The cabin, which had once seemed like a place of mystery, now felt like a living labyrinth, a sentient entity that was testing my will, challenging my courage, and pushing me to the very edge of my sanity. It was as if the very structure of the place was reacting to my steps, a tangible reflection of my inner turmoil. I followed the spiral path, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, trying to decipher the secrets that were hidden in the depths of the cabin. But the deeper I went, the more disoriented I became. The walls seemed to shift, the corridors seemed to twist, and the floorboards seemed to vanish beneath my feet, plunging me into moments of terrifying darkness. I had lost my sense of direction, my sense of time, my sense of reality. I was no longer in the world that I knew, and I felt that I was no longer alone. The silence was now broken by whispers, by moans, by disembodied voices that seemed to be calling my name from different eras. As I approached the center of the cabin, the photographs on the wall started to glow brighter, their faces now more defined, more alive. And it was then that I saw it. In one of the images, the one that had caught my attention in the first place, the picture of me with the park rangers from 1922, the rangers were no longer just looking at something behind me. They were now stepping out of the frame, their bodies emerging from the aged paper, their forms taking on a spectral glow. And as they approached me, I realized that they were not just ghosts from the past. They were also a warning of what was to come. They were my previous selves, pulled from different times, trapped in the same loop. The rangers from the picture were not just images. They were also entities, beings that were both familiar and alien, both human and spectral, each one with my same face, my same uniform, my same badge, but with eyes that held a depth of knowledge that I could not comprehend. And as they approached me, I realized that they were not coming to harm me. They were coming to help me. They were trying to break the cycle, trying to stop the entity that was controlling the cabin and pulling victims into its depths. And they were also trying to show me the truth. They reached out their hands to me, their touch cold and ethereal, and I felt a strange connection with them, as if I was merging with my past selves, as if I was becoming part of a collective consciousness that spanned across the ages. And as I held their hands, the cabin seemed to respond. The walls started to tremble, the floorboards started to shake, and the photographs on the wall started to explode in a burst of light. The cabin, which had once seemed like a trap, was now becoming a gateway, a portal to another time, another dimension. And I realized that I was now a part of something that was far bigger than myself. This was not just a personal battle. It was a fight against time, against the forces of the unknown, and then the revelation. As the light faded away, I found myself standing in the center of the cabin, not in the present, but in a different time, a different reality. The cabin was no longer dilapidated and old. It was now pristine, with clean walls, polished floors, and a new, yet familiar look. The old journals, the maps, the strange artifacts were still there, but they were now different, more detailed, more elaborate. And I was no longer alone. I was surrounded by park rangers, men and women who looked just like me, all from different eras, all staring at me, all waiting for me. And I knew that the cabin was not just a place of mystery, but a place of time travel, a place where I was meant to face my destiny, and the destiny of those who were trapped in the loop, all those that had been lured to the cabin in the same way that I was. I had come to that place as a park ranger, but now I was something else. I was the only one that could end the cycle. My scientific mind was now replaced by a sense of purpose, by a will that was beyond my own fear, and I knew that the only way to survive this was to embrace the impossibility of the situation. I had been trapped, yes, but I was also the key, the one that could break the rules of the cabin, the one that could rewrite the pages of history and the only one that could truly escape the trap. I was no longer a pawn. I was now a player in the game, and I was ready to face the consequences of that role. My breath hitched in my throat. A short, sharp gasp as the world around me shifted. The old, dilapidated cabin replaced by a pristine version of itself, bathed in a warm, inviting light. The ghostly figures of the past park rangers stood around me, their eyes fixed on my face, their expressions a mixture of anticipation and hope. I was no longer alone, no longer just a man trapped in a nightmare. I was now part of a collective consciousness, a tapestry of souls that had been woven together by the threads of time, by the secrets of the cabin. And I felt the weight of that connection, the burden of responsibility that had been placed upon my shoulders. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I looked around the cabin, taking in the details of this new yet familiar reality. The walls were clean and smooth, the floorboards were polished and gleaming, and the furniture was old-fashioned but well-preserved, as if it had been pulled from a museum. It was a glimpse into a past that was both real and unreal, a testament to the power of the cabin to bend and twist the fabric of time. And I was trapped in that new reality, facing new rules and facing new challenges. I tried to speak, to ask the rangers what was happening, to understand the purpose of this strange transformation, but my voice was lost in the silence, swallowed by the overwhelming presence of the cabin. The rangers did not speak either. They only stared at me, their eyes reflecting a depth of knowledge that I could not comprehend, as if they were waiting for me to make a move, to take the lead, to show them the path forward. It was as if I was now in charge of them, as if I was their leader. And I knew that I had to show them the way to break free from the cycle of time that had imprisoned them. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible, trying to decipher the codes of this twisted reality. The photographs, which had once seemed like windows into different eras, were now nothing more than memories, ghosts of a past that was no longer relevant. The journals, the maps, the strange artifacts were now just tools, clues that I had to use to navigate the labyrinth, to find a way to defeat the entity that was controlling the cabin, and to restore the balance of time. My scientific mind was now completely gone, replaced by a sense of purpose, by a duty that was stronger than my fear. And my role in this journey had become very clear. I was now the key. I looked at my uniform, at my badge, at my face in the window's reflection, and I saw that they were no longer just symbols of my profession. They were now also symbols of my destiny, testaments to the responsibility